So let's look at how we use loops and arrays. Now this example here is the one we were just working on, which is we've got this array which contains good TV programs, and here for example is we want to print the names of all the television programs out, and so we've got 4 successive print statements. If you find yourself repeating something over and over again, like copying and pasting lines over and over again, then you should immediately think to yourself, oh, this is a great place where I could use a loop. So let's change this code. So instead of having this repeated print statements, let's use a for statement instead. So I'm going to create a variable, and let's call it I, and it's going to have an initial value of 0. And what we want to do is we want to continue this loop to continue while I is less than 4. And every time we go around the loop, we're going to take I and we're going to add 1 to it. So it's going to look like that. Close the brace. And so instead of repeating this 4 times, what we can actually do, and I can just copy this, we can actually pop that in there, and I now no longer need these lines. So this is particularly useful where, you know, we were not doing something 4 times, we could be doing something like 1,000 times or something. We don't really want to repeat the line 1,000 times. So now we're going to go around the loop. What we want to happen is actually we want to print out the name of the TV show. We can do that just by changing the thing in here. And what we're going to use, we're going to use the loop indicator to actually access the different values in the array, just like that. So the initial value for I will be 0, and so what will happen is it will print out the first value in the array, then I will become 2, etc, etc, etc. Round and round it goes. So let's save that and let's try it out. Come over here, and there you go. We've got that effect that we were looking for. We can use the loop with our indexed array to print out all the values. Now obviously here I'm just printing the values out, but it could be something more complicated. We could be doing maths or something like that. What about then, for example, let's try something much more complicated. Let's say that we wanted to actually print these index values into a form, into like a drop-down box or something like that. Well, let's create a form. Now I've got some of this already set up, so I'm just going to paste it in. Here's my form. So I'll talk through this in a second. Now, so I'm going to have a form now. This is going to be some HTML, so I'm just going to fix this. I'll come back to that. I'll tidy that up in a minute. Here's my form, and I've got a form, and you can see it's called TV, and it's got a response page, and we're going to be using post. And this is the interesting bit here. I'm going to have a select box, and my select box is going to have options that are generated from the PHP. Now the syntax for an option box, so I'm just going to type one of them down, would be something like this. We would go option value equals, and then we have some value like 1 or something, and then what happens is after that point, what we would do is we would have the actual value that would be being used. So let's say daily show. Like that. And then we close the option off. Close the option off like that. And we would have, oops, there we go. And we would have a whole bunch of these being repeated over and over again for each of the different options. So it would look something like that. So we'd have value 2, and then we'd have, I don't know, something like Lovecraft Country or something like that. Just pop that in that gap. Save. Let's we'll try and bring this up. Let's see what it looks like. So you can see down the bottom, I've got my little form popping up with my little option choices. But of course, what would be nice it would be if this bit here could actually be generated from some PHP. So I wouldn't actually have to write these out over and over again. This would be dynamically generated. So this is an example where we're going to mix the PHP into the HTML. So I'll leave those options there for the moment so you can see what we're going to do. So I'm going to insert a PHP block here, and I'm going to put it where the option choices go, and let's just have one of these. And what we really want to do is we want to turn this into a print statement. So it's going to look something like this, and there we are. And we want that print statement to run over and over again, but with the different values being pulled from the previous array. So let's reuse the loop, copy and paste. So this is going to go here, and we're going to close that off like that. So let's have a look at actually what we actually want to happen in here. So actually what I could do is, let me just say that I can run this now, and let me just delete this and tidy it up a little bit so we can see what's going on here. Save. So have a look in here now. We've now got our option list, and you can see it's going to be printed into that gap. So let's save it. I saved it already. Let's click refresh. Boom, here we go. And of course, currently it's going round and round the loop over and over again, printing the same value in. But at least we've got 4 values in our drop-down box. It just happens that they're all exactly the same value. So now what we can do is we can alter this slightly, and we can use the values from our array inside the option list. So what we want to do is we want to replace that, and we want to replace this thing. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to put some PHP in that gap there, and I'm going to put some PHP in that gap there. So now that looks a little bit more complicated, so let's just make sure we understand what's going on here. There's my first string. Now that's going to contain some of the form HTML option element, the tag, the attribute, sorry. And then here is going to be the initial value. So what we can do is we could use $i in that gap, can't we? $i. So for the first option value, it will return the value 0, the second one 1, etc. And then in here, we can actually simply print whatever the value of the array is that goes in that gap. So, for example, we could here put the value from the array. So let's try it out. I've saved it. Yeah, let's click refresh, and there we go. So I've now got a drop-down box, and you can see it's got the 4 items from my array. Now, of course, what's particularly nice about that is if we add on another item, so let's put last week tonight back in. What that should mean is I don't have to adjust the array. Now, of course, there is a slight problem here because I've actually hard-coded the value 4. So what I want to use is I want to use that function, count. What am I going to count? Well, I'm going to count to see how many items there are inside the Good TV array. So if I've got 7 items here, if I've got an array with 7 items in it, that would return 7, and hopefully this will print all of the items. Let's try it out. So now we've got, oops, well, I've gone, quick check. Classic, always doing this. Drops the $sign off the front of the variable. Click refresh, and there we've got all our items, just like that. So, you know, if I add another item in here, just to prove it actually works, and let's say we added in show or something. Something like that. Save it, back over here, click refresh, and you can see it's automatically added the item onto the drop-down list. I now no longer have to start worrying about adding extra HTML in here because it's automatically generated by that really nice combination of an array and a loop.